Welcome back. Tonight, our own Dominic Carter wraps up his conversation with former New York Governor David Paterson. Dom?
Well, Andrew, they both made history, and you would think the fellow Democrats, former Governor David Paterson and the President of the United States, would have a great relationship. But the truth is they have somewhat of a bitter love-hate relationship. Now, here's the backdrop. President Obama wanted Paterson to name Caroline Kennedy to the U.S. Senate. Paterson, in a high-profile manner, did not. And then in return, when Paterson was at his lowest point as governor in the polls, but was vowing he was running for re-election, the president finished Paterson off by coming to town and embracing another Democrat, Andrew Cuomo. Governor Paterson, the beginning of the end for you was when President Obama came to town and embraced Andrew Cuomo and not you. How hurt were you by that?
Well, it was disappointing, but I don't know exactly what President Obama did know about that. And in spite of whether I liked it or not, he was the first African-American governor who was under tremendous attack from a lot of quarters. So I just made sure that I continued to be supportive of him, regardless of what happened in that situation.
Did it break your heart as the first black governor, he's the first black president, and it's obvious you guys were not seeing eye to eye?
Well, look, there were 47 other governors whose state was in recession. All of them were particularly unpopular at that particular time. I don't know why I got picked out for any special consideration, but I would say that Bill Thompson could have used a hand as the Democratic candidate for mayor in 2009, and I don't think that Congressman Charles Rangel needed to have White House intervention when he was being censured in 2010. And I wondered which of the president's Republican detractors did he ever go after as hard as he did 3 African Americans from New York. The thought crossed my mind.
Governor, you know what you're saying here. You're a very smart man. You obviously don't need me to remind you of that. But what you're saying is this president has been on the attack against African-American officials.
Well, I mean, I just pointed out those particular instances. I'm just saying that this president, I think, has worked very hard. We have supported him immeasurably and tried to be as helpful as we could be. And even at this point, he needs help, and we'll give it to him.
Governor Paterson, what was your biggest disappointment while you were in office?
I would say my biggest disappointment was that at the kickoff of the Super Bowl in 2010, there was a report received by 3 wire services at exactly the same time that I would be resigning the day after the Super Bowl in a Spitzer-like scandal. And there were these messages as the Super Bowl went on, you know, film at 11, and all these things are going to happen. And I told my staff, leave it alone. Leave it alone. Because we're getting attacked so much from so many sources right now. Around midnight, go ahead and call the conference for 10 a.m. the next morning, just like they said. Now I'm standing in front of a worldwide audience. And what I would have said was, good morning, thank you for coming. I know you came here to cover a resignation. You've reached the wrong office. What you really need to do is research the lies, the innuendos, and the rumors that bring you here today. And since that's going to be a lot of work, I have nothing further to say. I'm going back to work. Have a good day. But for some reason, I allowed my staff to talk me out of doing it, and they just called up the media and dispelled the rumors, and there were more rumors about other things that weren't true by the next day. I regret that I made that decision, but when I did that, I knew it was time for me to step aside because I had lost the luster, the spark that I had, such as in 2008, when that would have been my proudest moment. I had a feeling you might ask me about that.
Okay, and I was going to ask you, Governor, for your biggest accomplishment. So what was your biggest accomplishment?
I'm psychic. It was going before a statewide audience and warning that this would be the worst recession since the Great Depression. I didn't want it to be true, but someone needed to say it, and I was ridiculed at the time. 2 months later, Bear Stearns still hanging by a thread. Lehman Brothers goes out of business. Merrill Lynch had to be subsumed by Bank of America, and AIG needed $85 billion of government money that we had to solicit from the Secretary of the Treasury from New York, because AIG is housed in New York, and that's when the whole country knew what we tried to tell them a couple months before.
Governor Paterson, I close this way. Over the weekend, you were up in Albany. Your official portrait unveiled with Governor Cuomo, a lovely portrait of yourself, first African-American governor. I note with great interest that behind you on the right-hand side of the portrait is a cane. Why did you put the cane there, Governor? What symbol, what message are you trying to send?
Because I was always eligible to use a cane, and because of the neighborhood I was living in when I was about 18 or 19, and a high crime rate there, I thought it was unsafe to carry the cane because it was an instant admission to anyone that wanted to conduct any wrongdoing that you're vulnerable. And although the social workers tried to tell me people won't attack a blind person with a cane, oh yes they will. They'll attack whoever they think is the most vulnerable person on the street. But now if I needed to use a cane, I would gladly use it. Many people who are disabled are dismayed by the reaction they get. The disability rate of unemployment in our country is 37.5%, and people are insecure about their disability. So I wanted them to know that I don't run away from the fact that I'm blind, and neither am I running away from any assistance that I could get. So the cane is in the picture not to show that I use it, but that it's available. And that was my tribute to all the Americans who are disabled, who should feel proud of who they are and use any resources that will help them in their quality of life.
I love the way he talks and the personal relationships that he's talking about with President Obama. You forget that politics really is a very personal business.
They don't like each other. There's no other way to say it. The president is not fond of Mr. Paterson. Mr. Paterson does not like the president.
And
there's no other way to say it.
You'd like to think, Richard, that policy would trump politics or personal relationships. I guess it doesn't in a lot of cases.
No, I mean, he has nothing to hide at this point in time. He's not running for any elected office. He ought to think about writing a book, a tell-all book. That could be worth a lot of money.
I always say if politicians would just open up the way they do when they're former politicians, Shelley, keys would be... All right, we're going to take a break. We'll wrap up this week on RFL after this. Stay with us.